everyone, and welcome to our webinar. This is the top 3 growth opportunities for MSPs in 2023 and beyond. First, we have Mark Williams. He is the iPad channel consultant at Channel Company. And we also have WatchGuard's very own Andrew Young. He is the Chief Product Officer and SVP of Product Management at WatchGuard Technologies. And to kick things off, we're going to start with a poll question. This webinar is the top 3 opportunities in 2023 and beyond. So we want to know what you think the top opportunities will be for MSPs.
Well, it's good to see that the answers line up with what we'll be talking about today, Mark.
Yeah, I bet they will. I'm hoping.
So excellent. It looks like actually pretty closely split between 4 of the 5, and then the usage-based
top one
trailing.
By the way, so I'll just add my piece of this. So the top one, the expansion of new security services. I mean, that's in all the research we do. Security continues, and it has for the last 3 or 4 years, kind of risen to the top as the area that most partners are. It's their #1 investment area. So I don't know what you're seeing, Andrew.
I think that's a really insightful, that leap from MSP to whether it's MSSP plus security or MSP plus security or MSSP, right? We're seeing a lot of that transition happening.
Yeah, I'll let you talk about the XDR stuff, but the 2 other ones, the cloud migration and the outsourced managed security, obviously we'll talk about that in a little while, but the cloud migration is another one. We're just seeing, again, no one can ignore that anymore. And what's moving, how it's moving, how secure it is it? We see it, that's like one of the second most important investment areas that partners are telling us about. So interesting that it lines up with some of the research that we have.
Well, great. Yeah, it lines up well. Let's, I think we can dive into it.
Perfect. So let's get into our first opportunity. But before we do, just one more poll question. Seeing what you guys think about MSPs adopting XDR to help scale and grow businesses.
Andrew, I can tell that the last one was your commentary.
I love acronyms.
It's always good to see these polls as we go through this, because you get a real feeling of what people are thinking. So this is great.
Yeah, you know what? I'm actually surprised by the results here. So I love to see this, and we are going to spend the first section here talking about the opportunity that XDR provides. So it's great to see sort of this acknowledgement of sort of the industry moving this way. I think the most interesting are these middle 2 buckets, Mark. This idea that, the skills within my organization may not be able to support supporting an XDR solution, or just still people being in that education phase and learning about what it is and how it's going to help them out. So I think hopefully we can answer some of those questions here.
Yeah, we will. I think that's and by the way, the skill thing is a big issue across the board. So having people realize that, good idea, customers want it, customers need it, it's the right direction, but can I fulfill on that? We can talk about some ideas later. So,
let's jump in and talk a little bit more about XDR. And I thought it would be good just to start kind of with a definition, right? There were good, 20-25% of the folks that are still not sure what XDR is, and I'm interested, and like you were saying, XDR has suffered from that sort of acronym hype, and every vendor defines it differently. Even within the analyst community, there's different definitions of it must do this or it must do that. So I think it's good to start out with a definition, right? And it's kind of easy to start with EDR, endpoint detection and response, right? Been around for a number of years now. It's really about this idea of kind of an endpoint focused solution, right? One solution on the endpoint, collecting telemetry and really focused not just on prevention, but moving the discussion or the security to, you know, really this ongoing detection and response, and leveraging that telemetry, that data, that collection of events, and really using that on the endpoint to create detection and response. And as that's evolved, this idea of XDR, or extended detection and response, has really come into play. And it's this really wonderful sort of expansion of that idea of just saying, you know, if I took all of the security services within my environment and I collected the telemetry from all of those, you know, could I make the solution kind of the overall solution better than the sum of the parts, right? And that's what XDR really promises to deliver on. I have multiple security services, kind of a three-step process, right? I ingest and normalize all of this telemetry, all of these security events or non-security events, just bringing all this data together. The second step is all about correlating that data, right? Finding that needle in the haystack, and leveraging things like, you know, from basic sort of automation through policy and workflows to machine learning, and really leveraging artificial intelligence to really mine this data and find anomalies and security events within that kind of scope of telemetry. And then finally, the third step is all about response. So now I've detected something, and how can I automate the response? And it's really about, you know, there's this idea of open XDR and closed XDR, and again, some analysts say that it is a, you know, single vendor solution, and that it's all about a closed ecosystem, because you can do kind of special things when you own both sides of the equation, right? It's not just like a SIM. It allows you to really kind of get in there and do both on the detection and the response side, of the telemetry and the response side, as a single vendor solution to be able to do that. But this idea of open XDR and bringing in external events along with that security solution is really a powerful sort of idea. So I think about XDR, and I think about what's the opportunity now for an MSP. I really like to think about it in two big buckets, right? One is about it provides better security, right? Higher efficacy for the MSP's customers. Again, this idea that, you know, I have defense in depth, I got my security services deployed. How can they learn from each other? How can they collaborate with each other and really make the solution more powerful than the sum of those parts? And the second big opportunity for the MSP is really around efficiency, right? It's about making the MSP one, be able to use, we're going to talk a lot about kind of skills within the MSP community, leveraging the skills that you have on staff, and leveraging XDR as that engine to be able to really kind of, you know, again, leverage the skills that you already have, right? Create automation, create that efficiency, and really about making the MSP more profitable, and by leveraging the skills that you have and the automation, that it really allows you to be more profitable as an MSP as well. So Mark, I don't know what you're seeing in these two areas, but that's really where I see the opportunity for the MSP.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, obviously with your security background, a lot of details, but let me tell you what I hear from MSPs when I talk to them. First thing, customers don't want to buy security products. They want somebody to solve their security problem. And obviously MSPs are positioned to do that. So your commentary around the fact that, you know, that's really what they're looking to do. So it's a combinations of various products, services, and solutions, number one. Number two, I think this concept, we're moving more and more towards ecosystems than we are single vendors, period. I mean, the concept is that things have to work together and we have to address multiple situations. So we live in an ecosystem environment. So I think that's, and by the way, in my discussions with MSPs, this is one of the things that they do for customers, is they're that glue to the ecosystem across all the vendors and things like that. Your last comment around profitability. And by the way, before I get into that, we also did some studies around the economic outlook, right? And what we're seeing in terms of the economic outlook relative to this is customers are wanting help, right? They need help. And most of the partners, in fact, 60% of the partners we talked to said that they believe their managed business is going to be the growth factor for them over the next couple of years based on what they're currently seeing. So that's another one. Last, I'll say, is the profitability. Automation obviously is critical. So the more that these kinds of things can be automated, the more that they can, do that directly, 100% directly impacts profitability, right? So the more that this can be automated, the more that the MSPs can focus on the customer side as opposed to having to deal with all the background. The more it's automated, directly affects profitability. So I agree with you on each of those areas.
So, I'm gonna make a quick plug for WatchGuard here, and just kind of tie it back to this last survey results, right? So this idea, first of all, again, I'm going to focus on these middle two responses. The first is this idea that it's a great idea, but I'm not sure I have the skill sets to be able to leverage this. I strongly encourage you to look at ThreatSync and the unified security platform from WatchGuard and how that brings it all together and how you can leverage the skills that you have on staff today, right? It's automated and really is focused on the MSP community. It's built for the MSP community and to make you successful with the skills that you have. So encourage you to come and beta test it out or run a trial and get familiar with it. And then, I'm not sure what it is, and I'm interested. I really encourage you to see the power of, when you bring network and endpoint and identity and you're able to correlate those events. It's just really powerful. So I encourage everybody to give it a try and see. I think you'll really get a taste for where the future is going and how these security elements come together.
Great. So I think the next one we were going to do, I think we were going to open it up, Liz, for questions, I believe.
Yes.
Any questions out there?
We do have some people in the audience that have already been doing XDR for a while now. So what suggestions do you gentlemen have that could help them keep it growing in relevance while adopting other modern security services?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I would say that first of all, you want to be working with a vendor that's continuing to build on the value that you're providing, that's being provided there. So it is it's this growing ecosystem. At WatchGuard, I call it a forever feature, right? Will never be done. And I hope 10 years from now that we're continuing to, bring in new technology and bring in new machine learning models and give insights into threat hunters and different personas within the managed security service provider community. So, I think it's really, the onus is on the XDR vendor to make sure that it continues to evolve and add value and that, allows you as an MSP to grow along with that.
I think that's so important. By the way, we talked to a lot of MSPs around how they select vendors, right? So innovation and where this is going is it's kind of always been there, but it actually has picked up because it's like I can't get left behind. So I want to make sure I'm working with someone that confidently can bring us into the future. So I love the forever. So 10 years from now, Andrew, I'm going to give you a call and we're going to find out whether or not it's still forever or if it had a shelf life to it.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. And we have one more question. Where is the best place to start with XDR for those of the audience who haven't adopted it yet?
So again, I can speak from a WatchGuard perspective. We've recently released a pretty major new version of our XDR solution, which is called ThreatSync. If you're using WatchGuard Cloud and you're using either EPDR or our endpoint or Firebox, our network security solution, we turn it on for you, right? It's enabled for you. And the more products that you bring into that environment, the more telemetry you're adding to ThreatSync and the more value you're going to get out of it. So I can only speak from a WatchGuard perspective is leverage WatchGuard Cloud, kind of start adopting the unified security platform, and you'll see the benefits from it without really having to do a lot of work.
I'm gonna let you stay with that answer. I mean, the things that I would add to it is, we hear this a lot, right? So, hey, growing MSP business have a lot of skills, but security is maybe something that's a little bit higher, and maybe I can't provide those services. That we're seeing more and more around entering opportunities. We're seeing more and more around partnering opportunities, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But that's another area that I think people can look at to say, okay, maybe I can't do all of it. Maybe I need to work with some people that can help me. That's become more of a concept.
Yeah, and reach out. You can reach out to your local WatchGuard channel account manager, and they'll be more than happy to help you get up and running.
Perfect. And actually, one other question just came in for you guys to answer quickly before moving on to the next opportunity. Someone said keystroke logging software, legitimate and otherwise, are dangerously prevalent. Is there any ability, and if not currently, any intention to introduce detection of these potentially dangerous tools?
It's a great question. So again, I think that there's a couple of really great ways for you to approach this. I think one is, again, it's hard for me. I live in the WatchGuard world, so I'm going to give you sort of very WatchGuard centric answers here. Number one is the tool set is it's what we call includes what we call the Zero Trust Application Service. So every executable, every PE, every process that runs on your endpoint goes through what we call an attestation process, right? So we take every process, and there is no such thing as suspicious. We will hold it off from running and go through that assessment process until we know that it is known good or known bad. And known bad will block, known good will allow to run. So, a malicious keylogger is something we would prevent from running. The second thing is there are tools where you can explore this telemetry, right? And you can go in there and create hypotheses with this telemetry and go in and see, if I'm seeing this sort of behavior or this sort of process running, then you can automate those response actions and go in and say, kill that process or quarantine that file. And so leveraging these tools to explore the telemetry is really powerful. It requires, when you get into the details, it requires a more sophisticated skill set. So you have the Zero Trust Application Service that we take care of. It takes zero skills on the MSP side. ThreatSync will continually monitor and look for those types of processes, and then these threat hunting tools allow allow you to go in and get deeper into that telemetry. So depending on the sophistication of the organization, you can find the right tools to sort of match.
Perfect. More questions are rolling in, so just a reminder to everyone, if there's time at the end, we'll get to those. And if not, we're more than happy to reach out after the webinar to make sure that your questions are answered. So before the next opportunity, we're going to launch another poll question. And it is, will cybersecurity spend remain resilient during an economic downturn?
I think there's a good portion, Andrew, that are expecting you to answer this question for them.
Yeah, again, really interesting, really interesting responses. Well, it's wonderful to see the optimism. 85%, I think, are in either a little bit of a wait and see mode, but almost 60% are kind of really confident in that resilience. So that's awesome to see.
Yeah, we by the way, we did a fairly intense study with solution providers during the pandemic, right? And we kind of boil it into wants versus needs, right? And what we've the wants sometimes were the things where maybe the spend was down, but the needs, security, things like that, I mean, those continued to stay strong. By the way, the combination of security and the combination of need for managed services, that combination, probably both of them were significantly up. So by the way, this matches about the percentages that we were seeing. We were seeing about 60% of folks said that they thought would be that this would continue to be resilient during this time frame. Hopefully, we don't get into any serious economic downturn, but if we do, at least the security market should stay strong.
And I think it's safe to say that cyber criminals aren't going to take a rest, right, during an economic downturn. And in fact, there's typically especially when it comes to social engineering, they really look for opportunity, and difficult economic times create opportunity for cyber criminals. So we expect that that cybercrime will certainly won't slow down, and I think that the need, like you were saying, the need for the spend will absolutely continue, and I think that, like the poll results are, there's a lot of optimism that that there's good resilience in this market. But one thing we can say, right, and kind of getting into this second opportunity, one thing that we can say is that budgets will be tighter, right, and as you move into it, people are going to put more scrutiny into where they put their dollars, and even within cyber, it's important that the tool set allows for the partner community to remain profitable as those things do tighten. And so I think it's when we look at vendors' technology stack, it's really important to get the most out of it, right, as an MSP. And I think there's a couple of ways of doing that. When I look at, when I'm matching products up between, competitive products, let's say on endpoint, I'm looking at competitive products. It's really important to understand what's included in each. It's difficult to tell from the name, so you really got to get into the details. In fact, I was mentioning in the ThreatSync section, I was talking about this idea of the zero trust application service. We have people behind that, right? And so it's almost like a managed service that's included within the license of the product, and it's such an important value proposition when you're comparing it against a competitive product that maybe it just classifies files as good, bad, or suspicious, but then suspicious creates a whole set of work for an MSP, right? They got to go and they got to figure out, what does suspicious mean? Is this good or bad? What do I do with it? And so by looking at the technology and making sure that you're getting the most out of it, I think it's really important. The second area that I think is really important is around operational alignment, right? Making sure that the MSP's tools are supported by the vendor's tools, right? And that they interact with each other. And I love, like, PSA for me is a great example of this. If your tools, if your vendor's tools, your security tools aren't integrated in with your PSAs, it's creating inefficiency. And so by getting that operational alignment, you can open tickets in your PSA, you can close them automatically. Having that closed loop ticketing is so important. And so that aligning your operational tools with your vendors creates efficiency and profitability. And then the third thing is really, for me, is about automation and making sure that, and automation means different things to different people, but aligning your expectations of automation with your vendors. And that can go from, if you are doing code-based automation, that they have the right APIs and ability to write automation through those APIs, to UI-based workflows, and again, for lower skilled operators, you want to be able to handle that workflow-based automation, and then machine learning, right? And machine learning is becoming so important as part of that idea of automation, because not only is it create a lot of efficiency, but it can find things and see things that a human can't. So really looking and making sure that your vendor has that spectrum of automation tools, and then allow you to kind of line up where your needs are.
Those are great points. And by the way, when we talk to MSPs, the biggest thing that we hear, right, is that, if you're going to be working with MSPs, right, you got to understand how the business works, right? So this concept of, hey, these are things that we consider later doesn't work. They're becoming requirements. We talked to a number of MSPs that says if the automation tools aren't there or don't exist, I'm not going to pick an inferior product that has that, but I have to have those capabilities. Otherwise, it doesn't fit into what they're doing. So that's one. The operational piece, I can't agree with you more. More and more what we're seeing is, okay, look, if I'm going to actually get to the next level, I'm not going to do it by hiring 5,000 more people or 100 more people or 20 more people. The way I'm going to get more efficient is through automation in a variety of ways. So from the product tool set to the PSA, things like that. We also hear, and this is, it depends on the partner's capabilities, but the concept of starting to use code-based managed services, right, where you're actually developing things as opposed to just having people, that's becoming more important now. A lot of partners can't do that yet, so it's, it requires that kind of, somewhat application development capabilities. But we're hearing more and more partners saying, look, that gives me an opportunity to differentiate. That gives me the opportunity to set myself apart a little bit, and basically be able to repeat things. Because one of the things that we heard is that, so differentiation, right, is how you win deals and kind of get things going. Repeatability is directly tied to profitability. So, if I can use those to help differentiate myself, as well as be able to repeat the things so I can continually do it over, we hear that constantly. So I agree with what you're saying there. So
since there are no questions, we can move on to the next opportunity. But before that, we do have another poll question. I believe this is our last poll question. So I will launch that right now. And it is, do you currently or would you consider partnering with a third-party managed service provider?
This one will be interesting. Andrew.
I agree, and we'll talk about it when we get to the results, but I think this is one where the answer is changing over time, right? We see sort of this evolution, the evolution to the answer over time.
I agree. I think there's a lot of market dynamics that are changing this answer.
So what I see here, Mark, is 2/3 kind of in this idea of, yes, as a managed service provider, I would partner with somebody on security and 1/3 saying, no, I do that myself. And I would say that 2 years ago, I think that would have been swapped, where 2/3 would have said, no, that's my business, and 1/3 would be willing to do that outsourcing. And I think that's shifting, and I think it's shifting for a few different reasons. One is, I think MSPs, I've heard from a number of them who have tried. You have to, it's a big investment, right? You have to build out a SOC, a 24/7 SOC to be able, threat actors don't necessarily work during business hours. And so, having this security operations center that's 24/7, that's continuously watching within a customer's environment, it's expensive and it's difficult, and the skill sets required are in the highest demand, right? And so we see it very difficult for an MSP to be able to build out those capabilities. And that again, 2 years ago, there were those ambitions, but they've kind of moved to this idea of, hey, I can actually partner with somebody, maintain that relationship with the customer, and partner with somebody and be able to outsource it. So these results don't surprise me too much.
Me neither. By the way, again, I agree with you. It's a timing thing. That's what we found out, right? So, and here's how we kind of look at it, right? Especially from the folks we've talked to. Security, right, it really starts with the customer, right? Security is part of everything they're doing now, period. I mean, that's just a given, right? Many MSPs are basically helping them with all of their IT. And if they can't solve the security problem, that's an issue. So many of the MSPs we're talking to say, look, what I have to do is solve the customer's problem there so that I can continue to basically be able to monetize everything else I do. So how do you do that? Right? One is do it yourself, which is great. They have the skills and capabilities. Two is the problem doesn't go away, right? So it can't be, well, I can't worry about that. Let somebody else do it. So having companies that are coming forward that saying we can help you with that, whether it be third-party vendors, whether it be third-party other MSPs or others that are doing this, to say, look, we can basically step in and help you. That's becoming really, really important. The other thing that we see too is the fact that when we talk to partners, what's the number one issue that most partners are telling us they're having right now? Access to technical talent, and security even being a more of a stricter subset to that. So even for some of the partners that say they want to do this, being able to get the people to do that, it can be somewhat challenging. So I think what's happening is the environment is starting to say, okay, wait a second, we're considering that. Let me also add that, and by the way, we do a lot of work with some of the other bigger vendors in other areas that are starting to adopt and roll out some of these kind of models where I can sell a product or I can sell a managed product, and I can allow the partner to participate how they feel is appropriate. You're starting to see more of those models. What that boils down to, though, in our opinion, is trust. So for the MSPs that want to consider this, one of the biggest things that have to happen is I have to trust the person that I'm working with, right? And that has become such a critical component of this to say, look, how do I actually do this? How do I solve the customer's problems? And by the way, I should have choice in that as well. If there's certain things that I am as MSP are capable of doing, I want to be able to do those. But then what I want to do is I want to mirror that and combine that with some of the things that the vendors can do. By the way, a lot of cloud offerings work this way as well, right? So think about some of the cloud platforms, right? There's certain inherent things that the cloud platforms do, right? Just inherently. And then there's things and opportunities on top of that for the partners. The other thing, and I think you'll probably get into this, many vendors are recognizing this and saying, okay, let me provide some of those things that are more difficult, the more difficult services that for the partners that maybe they aren't able to deliver on. But, right, what we want to do is enable them for the services that they are capable of delivering on, right? So it's that combination. Let us vendor do some of the really hard stuff that maybe they don't want to take the risk, right? And then, but also combine it with things that they can do and make sure that there's interest there. The other thing we did so we've been studying this like for the last couple of years, and literally when we asked this question about 2 or 3 years ago, 72% of the partners basically said that's a competitive situation. Like I don't want anything to do with it. So I think that the fact that that's almost flipped. There's almost an inverse that you have now 70% of partners kind of going, I'm either doing it or I would consider it. But I'm guessing that that next level of consideration would be for a vendor or a third party I can trust and I can work with, that I know is going to have my customers and my interests at heart. So I think that's kind of what we're seeing. Andrew, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, there's two things that you touched on there that I think are really important, right? So one is when we think about MSPs and MSSPs, by the way, if I kind of put them all into this continuum of maturity, right? There's sort of three buckets of that maturity cycle, and I think it lines up nicely to sort of these results, right? The most mature of those MSSPs, they have a SOC, right? They own security themselves. They're able to operate that and have that 24/7 monitoring. And I think that lines up well with this third that says, no, that's what we do, right? We're mature enough that we can handle that. And then it slides over to, kind of that second level of maturity where, they have really sophisticated IT services, less sophisticated on the security side, have some management capabilities. A lot of times it's sort of a break fix or based off of an incident, but they don't have that deep technical expertise, and they may not even want to move into kind of those more mature security services, right? And so I think that middle area is really sort of I think can benefit from this idea of partnering with somebody for security, and then being able to do the response capabilities of containment or even going in and doing incident response, and then there's kind of the third category on that spectrum, which is people who are really just more going through almost a resell motion, so very few sort of managed services within their portfolio, but are slowly starting to add them, right, and get into a variety of managed services. And so I think it's important to have both the technology and the skills and the offering to be able to, one is to understand these different levels of maturity, but then also be able to match the tools and services to align with where an MSP is in that maturity, and whether they're trying to move up in that maturity level. So I think that so that really sort of resonated with me. And then the other area that you touched on was this idea of trust. And it's really interesting. You kind of the way that you were talking about trust as a vendor. The trust between us and our MSP community, WatchGuard specifically, is paramount, right? And so, for us, that idea of, as we start to offer managed services, is to do it in a way that enables the MSP and does not compete with them, right? It builds on that trust. It doesn't erode the trust, and we don't want to ever have one of our partners sort of afraid of taking a renewal direct or something like that. And so building that level of trust between WatchGuard and its managed service providers is so important, and it really drives as we build out these managed services ourselves. It really drives sort of our roadmap and our capabilities and how we'll partner with the MSP to deliver those.
By the way, Andrew, it is. I do speak to a lot of different vendors and partners, and it's refreshing speaking to someone on the product side that talks about it in that way, because I think it really is critical, and and it goes all the way across the organization. Because it's funny, we talk to partners around vendor trust, and it's we talk to them about, oh well, the channel organization, we trust them implicitly. Well, that's kind of their job. The question really becomes, the trust factor a lot of times comes into the corporate DNA, right? It's not necessarily the people that call me every day. It's the ones that are back working on products and solutions. Do they understand? Are they the ones actually, living that same trust model as well? So it's refreshing to hear you say that, by the way. So thank you. Questions? There are questions now. Liz, I think I saw a
Yes.
couple.
Yep, there are a few questions.
Excellent.
So the first one is, how does WatchGuard match tools or services for each MSP/MSSP?
So there is, when we look at the again, sort of this idea of that maturity, that continuum of maturity, products like WatchGuard's EPDR, right, includes services in the license. It includes that the threat hunting service and the zero trust application service, and can be deployed, very easily and automated through WatchGuard Cloud, all the way up to what we call WatchGuard for SOC, right? And WatchGuard for SOC aligns with the more sophisticated, MSP, the people that are kind of more to the right in that maturity continuum, and gives them tools for where they can go in and do threat hunting within the environment, and be able to provide a much sort of richer experience interacting with that telemetry within the platform. So it really provides the ability to align those tools with where the MSP is and their maturity.
Awesome, thank you. And another question is, how do you assess which services my business should be turning to a third party for? Are there quote unquote popular services others are outsourcing aside from SOCs?
For me, it aligns with sort of customer needs, right? I mean, as obvious as that sounds. So it starts with sort of managed endpoint, right? An area called MDR, I would say, is the most prevalent. As XDR, we talked about, XDR becomes more widespread. That evolution from managed endpoint to managed XDR will occur. So we see this evolution happening from MDR to managed XDR. And when you think about XDR as being this ability to bring all of the security services together onto a single platform, then it moves into those more sort of broader set of managed services across all security services within a customer's environment. So I'd say MDR evolving to managed XDR is where I see the biggest opportunity. I don't know, Mark, if you have anything to add there.
No, I think you got that covered. I mean, I think the other thing, some of the, in kind of a broader area, some of the cloud security areas, some of the specialized areas, we've seen partners looking for help there because maybe that isn't their wheelhouse right now. So that's another area. It's also
Awesome.
an investment area too.
The next question is, we are currently running TDR and EPDR. Sorry, I lost my place. What do we need to do next to move to ThreatSync?
So great question. At least at the time of recording this, we just launched a new version of ThreatSync that allows you to leverage both the capabilities in Total Security and EPDR together within ThreatSync. So there's a very simple migration that you move from TDR to leveraging the telemetry from EPDR, and that can be done right within WatchGuard Cloud. So if you're a WatchGuard Cloud user, I would say, and you haven't been in the UI in the last week or so, get in there and you'll see the tools you need to get up and running there. And again, if not, please reach out and we'll be happy to help you.
But I'll just summarize some of the things we're seeing across the board, and then Andrew, I'll turn it over to you, and we can have you kind of close out on your side. So in general, when we talk about this and we talk to partners, security for the last 3 years has been the #1 investment area. That continues, and we think we saw the economic impact of that. I think that's going to continue from what we hear. The second thing is around the customers are more and more wanting to not just buy products, but to buy things that are managed on their behalf because of the economy, their skill sets, their ability to hire. It's just more and more. So companies that actually can solve the security equation for them and be able to provide the managed services. And I think connecting to the issue around the ability to execute on that, obviously there's some of you that are great at that and you're doing it and you're doing well. But there's a lot of others, especially in the area of security, that need help. I think we're seeing that more and more vendors, other partners, as well as even distribution and things like that, are recognizing that there is a way to provide some of that help for some of you that may not have those skills and capabilities today. And I will tell you, and I know that those of you that have been in the channel for a long time, we've heard about partnering with partners for years. And I think it was kind of a sort of kind of had real, but not really real. I think that's changing. I think what's happening is people are starting to recognize, look, I can't do all things for all people. I want to be able to help my partners in certain ways, and they're making those things available, and they're doing it in such a way that it's non-threatening, right? So it's really is the intent of, it's not for me to provide the services so that I can go around a partner to the customer. It's the customers need these services, and I want to be able to provide them so that the MSP can deliver against that. That to me is the key. And the organizations that can articulate that and show that that's the truth, I think there's going to be more and more of these opportunities available to you so that you can actually solve the customer's problems, add in the capabilities that you have, but also be reliant on your vendors and others, not just for the products, but for some other things that will help you as well. So that'd be my summation, Andrew.
I think that's great, Mark. I think it's a great time to be a managed service provider, right? I think there are just an abundance of opportunity out there. I think, really think about where you are in that maturity continuum. Focus on your strengths. Find a vendor that is offering a unified security platform that's going to help you be more efficient and provide better services and more security to your customers. And again, I think, really just focus on your strengths and take advantage of these wonderful opportunities.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. And if you are still willing, we did have one final question come through. And that is, so as an MSP that was once a customer who has a WatchGuard firewall with total security and EPDR, what else do they need to add to offer XDR?
So it sounds like WatchGuard customer, firewall, and EPDR. It's like the magic combination. Go into WatchGuard Cloud, click on Threat Sync, and or I think in the UI it says Threats, and it'll take you to a dashboard, a brand new dashboard there that will get you started in that correlation, show you what's going on within your environments, and then you can start writing policy and automation policy around those around that correlation and the collaboration of those services. So it's very easy. You just look for that threats and the Threat Sync tab within WatchGuard Cloud.
Thank you, Andrew. And thank you, Mark. That's all the questions. We really appreciate your time today, and the audience, we appreciate your questions. Always feel free to reach out to us if any other questions come up. We're always happy to help where we can.
Well, thanks, everybody. Glad you were able to join. Good talking to you, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mark.